Engineer Harold Eseku. Yes, my name is Walanyo Kwaju Siabi, and it's a pleasure and an honor that even though I'm an engineer, I have been invited specially to come and share with you what Community Water and Sanitation Agency is doing to transform rural water supply in Ghana. I will go straight to, I'll give you an idea about the water sector we have, then the policy reforms in the sector, the progress we have made, and then a conclusion. If we complete a system, a water supply system in a rural community, this is how it's likely to look like. Very nice, and everybody will be clapping at the time of commissioning. Especially my friend, he's a politician, so he will say a lot of words to make people happy. But then we'll see how this can be transformed if it's not properly managed. So we are typically looking at very small communities, population below 5,000. Then we are also looking at population 5,000 to something close to 100,000. So we look at the wash sector in Ghana. I just want to send your memory back. Some time ago, we used to have Ghana Water Company, but now we have a number of organizations. The wash sector currently, when I talk about wash, I'm talking about water, sanitation, and hygiene. We're having two ministries that are dealing with that. We have a new ministry called Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, and we also have Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. Under the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, we have two key agencies. We have Community Water and Sanitation Agency. We also have Ghana Water Company Limited. And then we have Water Resources Commission. I want to also tell you a little bit about what these agencies do. Community Water and Sanitation Agency facilitates, according to our act, we facilitate the provision of rural water supplies and water-related sanitation. Water-related sanitation. We are not into waste management. GWCL, or Ghana Water Company Limited, they provide water to urban communities. And urban communities, we're talking about the regional capital, the cities, and some other urban communities. And we also have Water Resources Commission, which protects and manages our water resources. We have the rivers, the lakes, and then the groundwater resources that we have. It used to be that the metropolitan, municipal, and these assemblies, they were supposed to be managing waste, or the sanitation part of it, when the new ministry was created. And they are still doing that. But we'll see how that support is supporting or helping to improve sanitation, or is not helping to improve sanitation. Then a little bit of history. Before 1990s, we used to have one organization we call Ghana Water and Sewerage Corporation. And that organization manages rural and urban water supplies. In actual fact, they even go to collect water tariff, from small communities which are using hand pumps. GWSC at that time was also responsible for sewage management. We used to have sewage in Tema and Accra, sewage lines. So GWSC was responsible for that. But then in the 1990s, there were a lot of challenges with that sector. So there were calls for reforms. And then in the 90s, there were so many changes that came up in the sector. So the wash sector was reformed. In the 90s, there were so many of them. And Ghana Water and Sewerage Corporation was reformed into there were two organizations that were formed out of that organization called Ghana Water and Sewerage Corporation. The first one we call it Ghana Water Company Limited, which is responsible for urban water supply. And then we also have Community Water and Sanitation Agency. Later in the 90s, Water Resources Commission was also established to manage all our water bodies. The sewage services under GWSC was transferred to the Metropolitan, Municipal, and Lease Assemblies. And that was the beginning of our problems. And you know, technically, the assemblies they are not ready for that. And so they took on something that they were not capable of carrying. It's just like when you are given a load and you can't carry it. You either cry quickly for it to be taken away, or you stay there and suffer. But they have stayed there and they are suffering. Now, the reforms, I just want to concentrate on rural water supply. So we'll look at the policy reforms in the rural water sector. Wow. Our agency, we started a process once the reform idea came up in the early 90s. There were a lot of organizations within Ghana Water and Sewerage Corporation. So there was an establishment of a unit, and then which was upgraded later into a division. And then later in 1998, there was a new organization called Community Water and Sanitation Agency. And the mandate of that organization is to facilitate the provision of safe water to rural communities and small towns and promote water-related sanitation and hygiene practice. We have been struggling with that word, facilitate. And it's also one of the reasons why we are carrying out these reforms. And we were also mandated to manage a proposal that came up with these reforms. We call it National Community Water and Sanitation Program. And this was launched in 1994. So this program was launched in 1994, and CWSA itself was established in 1998. I also want to drive you through the kind of infrastructure that we have in Ghana now and the rural water supply. We have made significant impact since we were established. And currently we have a total of 32,656 boreholes fitted with hand pumps. And these are basically for very, very rural communities. Population 100, 200, 300, 2,000, up to just a little below 5,000. We have also been able to create a total of 1,022 pipe water systems. These also include connections we have made to GWCA lines, where it was impossible to have any groundwater source or any surface water source for treatment. We have also been able to create 82,309 household latrines. Our sanitation is restricted to the houses, and not beyond that. And also, we have installed 5,221 institutional latrines. It's sad that we have schools that do not have toilets, and there are so many of them. In actual fact, there's a document that was submitted by GAS to us. We need more than 28,000 facilities like this. I don't know when we're going to start and finish it. We have also been carrying out hygiene promotion to make sure that at least the rural folks understand the engineering about water, because of course you can provide water. If it's not properly transported and handled, you can't contaminate it. After 24 years of implementing the National Community Water and Sanitation Program, we have increased access to water. I'm going to concentrate a little bit on only water now. We have increased access to water from 24% in 1990 to something around 62% in 2017. We are compiling the data for 2018. We just exited 2018, so by April, that data will be available. And we have also, you will agree that we have contributed, even though our sanitation in Ghana is bad, we have contributed to the 20% that we have now. So if you look at the journey, I just wanted to show you from 2006 how we have been able to move with water supply. You will realize that in 2015, we have something around 65% of coverage or access. And then we decided to do something. These coverage figures or the access were eventually based on the facilities provided. We were not too worried about whether they were working or not working. But in 2017, we decided that no, our access must be based on what is working. So we allow our database to run. Sometimes politicians are very funny. They said, no, coverage can't. There was an argument in one of our meetings. They said coverage can't slide. We said, why? Population is increasing. And if we are not putting in anything, definitely the coverage should slide. Or even if we are putting in something and then we are unable to sustain what is there, we will have a slide. So we agree that we will input all the figures that are there. If it's not working, it's not working. And then we took that bold decision, and you see the slide from 65% to 62%. There were a lot of screaming, but I insisted that this must be what we will go to now. And then 2017, there was a slight improvement because we have looked at the challenges that we have and agreed that we have to deal with the challenges. I want to share with you some of the projects we have, which is likely to increase our access. We have two main projects. We have what we call Sustainable Rural Water and Sanitation Project, additional financing. Additional financing implies that there was a previous project. The previous one was $75 million US. And this one is 45.7 US million dollars. We are in Central, Upper West, Upper East, Brown, Hartford, Northern, and Western. The asterisk implies that our president has done something to those regions. So they have changed. They are no more like that. Yeah. But the project will recognize these regions until we complete by December. We also have another project, we call it Spain-Ghana Debt Swap Project. It's very close to the HIPIC program that we have. And that gave us $3.78 million US, and we are using this in the Volta region to cover 69,000 people in 28 communities. Now the reforms. In spite of the achievements, if we are all likely to have come from rural communities. Even if you're not from there, you pass there, you see what is happening there. There has been several studies, and it did not show that all the investment we are putting into rural water supply is giving us any benefits. We are investing, and we are not seeing the end of it. In 2017, we tried to compute all the money that we received from 1994 up to date. And we received close to 1.2 billion US. And that has been invested in Ghana. And when you go out, I'll share with you some of the issues that we have come up with. So there has been many of our colleagues who have studied that sector, rural water supply, and they have realized that there are problems. Now, the role of Community Water and Sanitation Agency is to facilitate. And within the National Community Water and Sanitation Program, there is a proposal that communities should manage their systems. So, no matter how much involved or complex the facility is, we use all the engineers, they do the designs, very complicated. And then, when we are done, we call some community members. We give them training in 1 week, and then we tell them, you are now engineers, go and manage. That is how simplified we have made water management. And our colleagues are saying that, no, that is not possible. there have been a lot of challenges. So one of them, Van de Broek and Ital, it says that in spite of the achievements in rural water services delivery, there is growing consensus that the approach needs to be overhauled. Yes. Then also, another one said that if the communities are left on their own, the water system often begin to fail. Once large-scale investments for major repair or rehabilitation works are required. There's a system in Greater Accra. I'm sure it's the largest rural water system in West Africa. We call it 3 districts. It covers about 160 communities. That system was constructed 11 years ago. And as usual, we handed over to community management. But fortunately for this one, there is a private sector company that was managing it with the community. Just last year, we were asked by Parliament, there was a question on the floor of Parliament to request the ministry to go and look at how that system can be rehabilitated to cover more communities. And the consultant advised that we will need 27 million US dollars. And so that system has failed. By the time the private sector company was leaving the system, when they said they were tired, they were owing ECG at the time close to 500,000 cedis in energy bills. So these are the kind of challenges we have. There are 7 systems in the northern region. Just the 7 systems, water systems, they are owing VRA 1.2 million Ghana cedis in energy and unpaid energy cost. And if you look at the true picture of what we have in Ghana, we have 1,022 pipe systems. And just 7 is giving us 1.2 million cedis. Then we can project what will happen to the 1,022. I just want to go through a number of the challenges that we have come up with. Of course, the systems are very complicated. Some of them, when you see it, even the engineers, when you're analyzing these systems, you will realize that it's quite a very complicated one. So you cannot just finish and hand it over to people who are not properly trained. We carried out the baseline study and in 2014, in 119 districts, and found out that 39% of the boreholes are not functioning. And we also have 25% of the pipe schemes also not functioning. Now, but let's look at it. Only 10% of those which are functioning produce basic water services. Only 10%. So in actual fact, according to our guidelines, only 10% of those systems are functioning. So we have continuous cycle of breakdowns. There are systems, the water system that we have rehabilitated 3 times already. We rehabilitate at great cost, hand it over to the communities. Then another time we have to rehabilitate, hand it over again. Then we carried out some audits, and we realized non-revenue water is between 45 and 60%. And so how can this kind of business prosper? We have also noted that across the country, there's a map I shall have included. Across the country, we have between 20 to 33% of all groundwater resources have issues with iron, manganese, fluoride, hardness. So when you drill a borehole to provide water to rural communities, they will have these challenges, at least 20 to 30%. Ashanti region is the highest. They have the 33%. And taking iron, manganese, fluoride, arsenic, hardness out of water is a serious engineering matter that has to be considered. And these are the things we will have to contend with when we're looking at rural water supply. Now, the fine picture I showed you, this is how become. Yeah, you will see, you remember I showed you a blue water treatment, a package plant. That is how most of our systems have deteriorated. And some, the larger part, are not working. When you go to the communities, they are not functioning. So we have agreed that there is lack of technical capacity. It's nice when you talk about community ownership and management. In fact, when you read the text of community ownership and management, you will follow and say that, yes, this is social science at play. But there's no engineering in that. Even engineers have challenges with designs. So we can't just design such systems and hand over. And I asked, we're going around doing a consultation in the regions. And there was a question, and I had to answer the question. But I used a kind of scenario. And I asked the gentleman who asked the question, that if you are rich and you have one aeroplane, you've bought one aeroplane, and you continue to buy aeroplane, do you have to necessarily say that it is your children who must be the pilots? Otherwise, if God bless you and you are going to have 100, you have to have 100 children. But no, what you need is someone who can manage those airplanes, and so you have your returns from the airplane. So it doesn't really matter who manages. It is that the systems, the water systems, must be beneficial to the users. We have also a very striking issue that I took up with KNUST. If you look at the water sector, CWSA, GWCL, and water resources. Let me just concentrate on these three. If you look at all the engineers and anybody having gone through KNUST or any UCC or Legon or any of those universities or technical universities or polytechnics, we are just having about 1% of such people coming to support wash management. Just 1%. And KNUST, I believe every year they turn out more than 1,000 engineers. In Community Water and Sanitation Agency, we used to have only 20 engineers managing. So you can see that we have been starved. The sector has been starved of professionals, and that is why we are having the kind of results we are having. When you go to the banks, and you just try it, engineer, when you go to the banks, just engage all those people at the front desk. Most of them are engineers. Yes, they are doing banking because we don't have any job for them. So the reform looked at how we can get professionals into the management of water supply. And of course, you have to do something to motivate them. Otherwise, they will not be willing to come. So we have also noted that there is a gap. Of course, water supply provision is a very technical subject. And then once there is a gap, we will have to bring in the people who understand so that they can solve the problems. And we are moving. The developed countries are moving. The new equipment coming are highly sophisticated. So you need people to move along with technology so that they can deal with the problems that are coming. There are new elements coming. There are new compounds because of the complexity of our development. So how can we deal with that? And how can we leave that to rural communities? These are some of the reasons why the agency decided to reform. So our board of directors agreed with us. In our act, our board of directors can change the policy, or our minister can change the policy. So at I think the second meeting of the board, we provided all the information available. So they agreed with us that we will have to start doing what we have to do. Manage rural water supply systems. And they have access to try as much as we can. and target 200 of them by 2019. We started 2017. The board was in place in December 2017, and they have access to do that. That is really impossible, but we are trying. The board has also made its decision formally to our ministry so that we can take all the necessary measures, because there will be the need to change the act and all of that. So in 2017, we organized a review conference. You know, policy changes are not matters reserved for only one organization. So it's a state issue. So we have to discuss all of this. So we met at our annual conference and we agreed to restructure. There are two key objectives, but there are so many that you can get out of this. First, is to restructure and strengthen CWSA to respond to the challenges of the subsector. And two, to mobilize resources and invest new technology and innovations required to sustain water provision in rural communities. If you check the policy of government itself, government is talking about rural industries. So water must be available in those industries in the right quantity and the right quality. What have we talked about? CWSA will now expand its mandate to also manage rural water systems. We will also review our acts so that we can respond legally to all the issues that will come up. The private sector, we used to just give water system to private sector people to manage. When we are done, we completed, let's say, a 20 million project. We advertise and the private sector people come, and then we say, okay, these are the keys, take it and manage. They don't have any interest. They don't have equity. So they are there. When they are tired, they pack and say, we are no more interested. Now we are saying that our PPP arrangement must be that you must have an equity. If you don't have equity, please forget it. The disassemblies will realign them, even in their own acts. In the disassemblies in the Local Governance Act 2016, these assemblies are supposed to be facilitators and play a coordination role. That is what they have to do. If there's going to be a nuclear energy in the district, I'm not sure that we will ask these assemblies to start the design and all of that. They can facilitate. Who is going to do it? And that is exactly the role they have to play. NGOs, they will continue to also support the system, providing key information. We will not go back to the days of Ghana Water and Sewerage Corporation, where we were managing boreholes fitted with hand pumps. Now, within the system, we have a certain group we call area mechanics. The idea now is that we will generate enough resources from there and then use these resources to support improvement on hand pumps and then also to manage sanitation. Therefore, if we are in a small community, whatever money we generate, we'll send it back so that they can improve on their sanitation. What have we achieved? I want you to pay attention. Out of the 200 pipe systems, we have been able to go into 100 by last month. That's by February 2019. And out of this system, we have employed 724 professionals. And we are paying them ourselves. It's not on single spine. This is what I call real job creation. We are paying them ourselves. And every month I have to scratch my head to make sure that I find money to pay these people. In addition, because of the nature of the way we are going to manage the system, there are a lot of agitations, small agitations here and there. So we have to manage. There are people that will say, oh, yes, we are there before they came. So we also have 287 auxiliary staff, what we call local content. They are also part of this. If you add these people to the 724, we're talking about over 1,000, just in a space of 2 years. And we are paying them their own salaries. Out of the 724, we have about 200 of them being engineers and technician engineers. We have also been able to meet the requirement of WHO. Every country is supposed to develop what we call water safety plans for every single community. We have been able to do that for all the 100 pipe systems. For all the 100 pipe systems, we are doing a lot of investment. This year, we're going to invest at least 36 million Ghana cedis in all the 100 pipe systems so that we can stabilize. Now we're working close to around 40% of capacity. If we are able to raise this, then we will have more revenue to be able to support the system. We are also carrying out consultation across the country. In fact, this is also deemed to be one of the consultations. I told our colleagues that, look, just allow us to come and share with you what we are doing. So this is also part of the consultation. So we can have an input. We haven't changed the act yet. We are just in the process, so you can advise us on what to do. In conclusion, the model we are using is very close. In Africa, there are only 3 countries: Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Uganda. What we are doing is very close. There is a small modification with Uganda. But this model is making sure that we can protect our infrastructure. We will also be able to create jobs, very decent jobs. We should not be dependent on government. And then also we will be able to mobilize resources so we can sustain the water system. And mind you, our president is a co-chair of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Wolanyo Kojo-Siabi, CEO, Community Water and Sanitation. Oh, I left the OV out, Order of the Volta. We want to take a few questions, if anybody has clarifications or his presentation, clarifications, not questions. Those who want him to clarify 1 or 2 things. Not, okay, so the first question is coming from Ghana Water. So.
Hello. Yeah, I wanted to find out, you mentioned that you have about 62% coverage in the whole country. Is it the whole country or just in the, okay, all right, okay, thank you.
I've answered for him, rural.
I'm more inclined towards the dirty side. And Wolanyo talked about clean water. Water and sewage have taken sewage away from them. But sewage is another part that I am very interested in. I'll do the little introduction. That's how the presentation outline will go. And then we'll look at the current situation in Ghana and look at the challenges that municipal authorities who are designated to take care of waste, the challenges that they face. And then we'll move on to the current methods of waste disposal or waste treatment. And then against the background of sustainable development, we'll look at sustainable waste management and perhaps a little recommendation for future strategy for waste management. As we all know, waste management from time immemorial has been a major problem facing the world. It's not only in Ghana, it's all over the world. It continues to be a monumental challenge for municipal authorities around the world. It's just that in the third world or in the developing countries, we have had major problems dealing with it. And as you can see here, it has serious impact on public health. In fact, if you look at the global disease burden, diseases attributed to sanitation or sanitation-related diseases contribute over 26% of the disease burden in the world, and most of it in the third world. And as I said here, sanitation is also directly linked to some of the SDGs. We all talk about Goal 6, Goal 7, and Goal 11. Goal 6, talking about clean water and sanitation. 7, talking about clean energy. And then 11, sustainable cities, because we all want to reach towards sustainability and smart cities. And of course, as I said earlier, it constitutes an even greater menace in the third world where the infrastructure is very fragile or almost non-existent. First and foremost, if you look at Ghana's situation, all the municipal authorities talk about inadequate financial and logistical arrangements. In fact, they claim that transportation alone, collection alone, accounts for 80% of their budgets. And of course, there is poor service coverage. If you look at the poor service coverage, if you look at the least developed areas, that is where we struggle most. In fact, there are various types of collection modules, but the communal systems where people have to pay and deposit is causing problems to the least developed areas. Of course, there are operational inefficiencies, poor attitudes to waste handling, and we can see it all around us. That is something that we really need to improve. Our attitude towards how we deal with waste at the source. And then I think Engineer Wolano talked about the death of skilled manpower. That if you look at the engineers who are into the waste or the wash sector, and you take a proportion of what tech produces every year, we have become a very small proportion. And a lot of us are not even going to work in the public agencies. The last audit we did at the GHIE of the municipal assemblies, out of the 257, which is the district assemblies now, only 18 had certified engineers in their works departments. So that should tell you something. So we have a really low situation there with the skilled manpower. And of course, the attitude of governments towards sanitation and waste. We talk about it, but we think that if you look at the record of what has been happening, it is very lukewarm. Of course, we've talked about the resource constraints, and as I said, 50 to 70% of the budget of district assemblies goes into just collection, simple collection. And as a result of that, most of the waste remains uncollected. Of course, we all know what uncontrolled urbanization has done to our country. Everybody is moving to the big centers. As a result of that, there's a chaotic explosion of unplanned settlements, and with it, all these major problems. And of course, there's a risk to public health, and as I've repeated, the infrastructure is dysfunctional. Because if you look at the whole value chain, the waste is generated, it has to be collected, it has to be transported, and it has to be treated before eventual disposal. This is a picture I took from Babayuri's research report in 2009. This is Upper La Paz. This is a typical example. And this morning, as I was driving to this conference, there was an issue on radio, people discussing this thing. It's a continuous site, not only in Ghana, similar situations, I'm sure, in Lagos, in Abidjan, in Kinshasa, all around the third world. And I did a study on sub-Saharan Africa, and in fact, in the Southeastern Asian countries too, they face similar problems in Philippines and Malaysia. If you look at the sources of municipal waste in Ghana, you see, the generation of waste depends a lot on your level of civilization. Or I would say your level of development, not civilization. That's a strong word. Your level of development. The more advanced countries, they don't generate a lot of waste in their households. But in Ghana, over 52% is generated in the households. And 29% in the markets and the commercial areas. Industrial and institutional waste is very low. It's only 14%. And that is a symptom of our underdevelopment, and then other types of waste. Now, if you look at the current methods of waste disposal in our country, in fact, what we are doing in Ghana, I don't think we can call it waste management, with all respect, President. I mean, he also has a background in sanitary engineering. All we are doing is basically what we call end-of-pipe system, collect and dispose. Nothing happens along the line, most of it. And we just go and put it in a landfill. In fact, we can't even call it a landfill. We call it a waste dump. Those of you who know Wager, those of you who've seen the Wager dump or Tishinungu, I'm sure the pictures will come up. A landfill is supposed to be an engineered model that has liners, leachate control, application of cover material. But in Ghana right now, despite the fact that there have been two major projects, and I'm sure our president if you look at the one in Pong, Kumasi, Tamale, but you go and visit there. I visited Dompoasi in Kumasi and I was shocked 2 years ago. All these principles that we should be following of leachate control, application of cover material on a daily basis, nothing was happening. And there's clear open access to scavengers, and you go to the place and you see this is not an engineered piece. And the one in charge of it is perhaps an environmental health officer who doesn't understand sanitary engineering or waste management. And of course, with the attendant pollution of groundwater sources and also surface water. We cannot talk about landfilling without talking about the migration of gases that happens. Because we all know that under anaerobic conditions, the biological material that deteriorates in our waste generates methane and carbon dioxide that are harmful to our atmosphere and contributes to global warming. I was talking about, this is, I think, a picture taken in Waja in Accra, yes, it's Malam. Malam is very close to residential settlements. And if you are living here, and you can see where you've parked your car, and you are facing this type of dam, when it rains, you can imagine what happens, the stench that you are confronted with. Of course, landfill, or waste dumps as I call it, remains the predominant one. There have been attempts at managing the waste using composting. And we all know that our experience with composting has been very poor. I mean, the famous example of the calamity of the Shinungwa compost plant. And those of you who know there and have visited there see that it was a complete failure. But quite recently, Jospon Company has put up the big plant in Accra, ACAP, which is treating about 600 metric tons of waste a day. It's contributing, but I think it's still a small percentage. And perhaps that may be some of the things we need to do to make waste management more sustainable. Of course, when we talk about sustainable waste management, the world today, sometimes we have these buzzwords which drop in from time to time. Since the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1992, we all woke up to the word sustainability. And yesterday I defined sustainability as the development that allows those of us existing today to satisfy ourselves with our needs without compromising the capacity of the generations unborn to be able to look after themselves. It means we have to inject sustainability into our design, into our thinking, into our plans. And so therefore, how are we going to have a sustainable waste management system? And that's how the system started changing. But of course, there have been a lot of discussion, and if you look at the literature, I did a lot of literature review, and the literature on the subject is very controversial, because some feel, especially if you go to mining, for instance, there are some who feel that, look, we are poor, we have the minerals, let's mine the minerals. There are others who feel that mining the minerals, although it gives you a little money, disturbs the environment, and therefore, you know, there's a trade-off between what you can get economically from the exploitation of your resources and also the conservation of the environment. So these are things that we have to look at as we talk about sustainability, not only in waste management, but in all sectors of engineering. Of course, as we are saying, the heightened awareness that has occurred over the last 20 years has caused a shift from this, as I call, linear collect and dispose to a more closed-looped circular arrangement where we can have sustainability. And most often than not, the literature predicts this, what we call the waste hierarchy model, the 3 R's. When you see the 3 R's, they are talking about reduction of waste, and that has many meanings. If you're looking at process engineering, for instance, you have to look at your process engineering line, the chain, to see whether you cannot reduce your inputs or change your inputs or have innovative ways of improving the process performance to reduce the waste that you generate at the end of the process. So that is waste reduction. We call it here waste minimization. First, we need to prevent waste if we can. But we know that we all cannot prevent prevent waste. Even what we are leaving out here is a little bit of waste. So human beings always generate waste. And then the second R is reuse. Which of the things can we reuse? Which of the things, the components of the waste stream, can we reuse? How can we encourage reuse? And then again, there's recycling. Which of the things can you recycle? And when we talk about sustainability, for instance, in the built environment, there are certain buildings, and today they have certification models to certify buildings and say that they are environmental friendly. We have LEED certifications. For instance, we can take this building. The water that you produce, the wastewater that you produce, can it be reused? And why not? They have the biofuel systems this time. You can have wastewater reused and being used for at least gardening. And then you save a lot of water instead of having to use pure treated water for your gardens. That can be done. But unfortunately in Ghana, I think apart from the One Airport Square and the UNDP building, there are no LEED certified buildings in Ghana. And I think we have to build this into our concept of the built environment sustainability. And in this case, we are just talking about the waste management. And then also energy recovery. This morning, there was a discussion. I saw my good friend Lawal, who made a mention of why we cannot produce energy out of waste. It's a big model, and people are using it all over the world. And I would explain to you why I think in Ghana, we are better positioned to do this. And of course, disposal is the least favored option, but it's the option that we are engaged in right now. We do collection to disposal. So if you look at the waste hierarchy model, disposal is red, and prevention, minimization is in the green. So if we want to have a green revolution in the waste management, then we have to adopt the integrated management systems that dedicate itself to the 3 R's. Of course, as I said, resources will be conserved because of the 3 R's. Pollution to the environment will be reduced. The environment will be protected. And as a result of the various streams, jobs are created. Material resource facilities will be in place to sort out these things, the repackaging, the baling of waste for reuse. And then by creating the jobs, poverty then can be reduced. This is Cheeseman's report of 2001. Look at the EU situation. And the gray area is where the amount of percentage of their waste that they send to landfill. And you can see the typical African country like Ghana, Nigeria, or Cote d'Ivoire is very similar to Greece. No wonder their economy nearly collapsed not long ago. If you look at Greece, they are doing very little recycling. They are doing very little recycling. Greece and Portugal, and it's all landfill. If you look at UK too, they are still doing reasonably little recycling, although they are improving. I think between 2011 and now, they've shifted up here. But if you go to the Scandinavian areas like Denmark, you look at that, they have a lot of recycling, composting here, and then energy from waste. So they are using waste to generate energy. If you look at this end, that represents energy from waste. So Netherlands, Austria does it, but Austria does a lot more composting because it's a very farming, agrarian country, Austria. The same with Belgium, Sweden, US. France are doing a lot more of energy from waste now and reducing the landfill. And in fact, the EU regulations, they have a waste directive. And the latest directive is suggesting to them that they should reduce the amount of waste that they dispose in the landfills by 50% by the end of 2025. That is from the 2011 figures. It has to be 50% by 2025. That is the new European Union directive. This is another one. There's a source is from Eurostatistics. Again, if you can see here, the Scandinavian countries, Germany does well. That's the green areas show you where they are recovering a lot. Waste to energy is the yellow areas, and red is the landfill. And again, Portugal, Czech Republic, Poland are like the African countries. They are depositing a lot in the landfills. So I think thinking forward, what should be the basis for our future strategy as Ghanaians, as waste management professionals? We have to improve collection and improve even our data, because if you don't have the data and you don't have knowledge of the characteristics of your waste, then you can't plan for its treatment. It's quite clear, to be able to have sustainable management, you need to understand the physical components, the biological and chemical properties of the major constituents of your waste. I looked at several reports, Asmani, Boateng, and Hyatt in 1998. And as you can see, this is the organic composition, 63%. It's organic. Paper is about 2%, plastics, glass, textiles, and other miscellaneous was a bit high in Ghana. The same way you can see from here, from AMA's report of 1999, 65%, 60%, Fobil in 2005, Ebel Aqua in 2010, 61%, Mesa in 2015, 61%. I'm concentrating on the organic portion because that is the portion that I believe, and most waste management professionals believe, that we can reuse and in fact use that as a basis for our energy from waste potential. As I said, we need now to recognize waste as a resource. Waste is not waste, waste is cash. Waste is money. And have innovative conversion technologies. And there are many, but in my view, I think that anaerobic digestion is the one that can really change the situation monumentally. And I think it has very promising alternatives for Ghana. Again, as I said, I want to, in conclusion virtually, by having anaerobic digestion, it means that we need to separate our waste. We have to separate our waste, perhaps at source. Waste is going to be diverted from landfill. We'll reduce our carbon footprint because we are not sending it to the landfills where there will be generation of methane and carbon dioxide. And then the nutrients can be recovered as digested for fertilizer. And then renewable energy. We can use it to drive turbines and produce energy and power, and therefore the environmental impact will be reduced. This is a conclusion. I think that we need to process the biodegradable fraction in Ghana of our waste, into using the waste to energy facilities, and recycle a lot more of the plastics, the paper, the glass, and that can only happen when we place an emphasis on separation of waste at source. And again, the AD can be a secondary source of power generation in Ghana. The future strategy has to be based on two streams. If you go to the Western Europe now, there are countries that are using 5 streams because they are a bit more developed. But they didn't achieve that in a day. I remember in 1984 doing an internship with Thames Water in those days in 1984. There was no waste separation in UK. But today, any place you go to, they have at least 2 or 3 streams. In the more developed countries, they can even do 5. But I think in Ghana, with a level of literacy, if you can just separate the wet organic waste as a green stream and get the rest as an orange stream, the plastics, the metals, the rubber, the textiles are designated as orange stream. And that one, the frequency of collection doesn't need to be very much because it does not decompose, it would not smell. You can even pack it up and leave it for about a month before it can be collected. And I think if we can motivate households, for instance, I pay 70 cedis a day, a month for collection, and if you can reduce, say, okay, reduce, if you can separate your waste, then you pay 50 cedis. I'll be motivated to do that, okay? And you realize that it is only the green waste that needs to be collected, maybe at least 4 days or so, because after the 5th day, there can be some very offensive things that you may be feeling at home. I just want to show you a video of what is happening in Wales. And I'm choosing Wales because they don't have as much organic content as Ghana, but they are using anaerobic digestion.
Food waste arrives at the plant. It's pre-treated and any remaining packaging is removed. It's then fed into the digestion tank. Here the waste separates into the 2 main products. Firstly, there's methane, and rather than being released into our atmosphere, this gas is captured and used to power electricity generators. Over 90% of the electricity produced in this way is exported to the national grid, with the remainder being used by the plant itself. Alternatively, the methane can be cleaned up and used as a vehicle fuel or fed into the national gas supply for use by homes and businesses. There is also a very useful byproduct, heat. About a third of this is used to heat the AD plant itself, with the remainder often being used to warm local factories and other buildings, making the whole process almost self-sufficient in power and heat. There's also a useful secondary product which comes from anaerobic digestion. This is a digest that sinks to the bottom of the tank, which is rich in nutrients and nitrogen, which can be used as a soil improver. And with the cost of fertilizer going up all of the time, this is a great way of returning nutrients to the land.
Yeah, so quite clearly, there are benefits for anaerobic digestion. And if whales can do it, where they produce about 40% of organic material in their waste, and we have 65%, then we are better positioned to do it. And I can tell you that the cost of production of electricity from waste to energy is much, much less than some of the thermal things. The figures that we've seen in Europe, you can produce it about 7 cents per unit, 8 cents per unit, much against the power purchase agreements that we've signed, 24 cents with Car Power and the rest in this country. So I think this is an area that especially the technical institutions, I mean, Kwame Nkrumah University has 42,000 students. They should be able to invest in an AD plant and be able to power the campus with that AD plant. At least there's KJTI in Kumasi. They can go and collect all the organic material from the markets and be able to feed that digester. I believe that this is the way to go for Ghana, and I expect Legon to do the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So this one I have to take advantage. I'm in the same field. This is polluting the environment. This is waste. Even when we put it in our waste, it ends up in the it ends up in the sea, and it has been killing fish because the fish eat it thinking it is food. So they catch the fish, and you see this in the gills. So as much as possible, if you finish, drop it in. If you don't do that, fold it and slip it in at the side of the bottle to avoid getting this into the environment. We have been told by 2030, there'll be more plastic in the sea than fish worldwide if we don't do something about it. So to avoid this, GHI is promoting this. Instead of using the bottles, we want to keep the environment. Have one of this and put your water in it. I carry one everywhere. I have the GHI one, and I have one which is Manchester United. Everybody knows, wherever I go, I've appeared on TV at least twice talking on sanitation, and I have this with me, and I tell people that use this. The water, you put the water in here, it is chilled, and it is 500 ml. You can measure. If you've drunk 4 in a day, those who are doing all those exercises, you know, which is healthy, you know the amount of water that you have drunk. So it is very good. It's for sale at the reception, so you can pick one. At the registration desk, 90 cedis, you can pick one. It is a flask which chills the water 24 hours. It's not a bottle, it is a flask. There are two. If you want to, if you buy these things, you either use it for hot or use it for cold. If you swap, that is it. That's why I have two. The engineering one for cold and the Manchester United one for hot. So you keep it. If you swap between hot and cold, it loses its function. So I have cold water with me all the time, and if I want hot, it is in the other one. I carry the cold with me almost everywhere I go. Thank you very much. The floor is open for questions. I have a lot to add, but that's not why I'm not the one presenting, so the floor is open. And it's almost lunchtime, so though we have a lot of questions to ask, let's be brief and to the point. I have thanked both of them that they've done very brilliant presentations. So thank you for your brilliant this thing. Order of the Volta, you've both done well. Okay, they say we should clap for them before we come.
Yes, my question is very brief. My name is Engineer Likamobo. The question I'm asking is to do with the solid waste in some of the estate buildings. Earlier designs of the solid waste collections were to have them all into a pool where they should be treated, which actually can easily feed into what ED just presented. But unfortunately, for some time now, the MMDAs have been pushing for one toilet household. So even where there is no space to make your own, how do I even put it, the receptive tank, they are forcing everybody to make some right in the house so that they can dispose of the common collection point. And I'm asking this because if we really want to go into all what ED just presented, it would be good to have the old system where all these things are in place and we can easily convert them if we want to convert them. So I want to know if this idea is known to the MMDAs while they are pushing a different agenda.
Thank you very much. He was talking about solid waste. You are talking about liquid waste. The two are different. We can produce energy from liquid waste as well. The reason why the MMDAs are promoting every house should have a toilet is that the old system, where you have a toilet somewhere, a public toilet that you walk to, if at 2 a.m. your daughter needs to go to the loo, you will use a black polythene bag.
Though there's toilet in the house, because the collection point is a common pool in the community, they want to rather get rid of the common point and have your receptive tank right in your home instead.
We don't have that. We'll discuss that one in detail. There's another question at the back. We are taking a maximum of 5 questions, so we'll go through it. And we had the water first. Please don't forget the water.
Okay, thank you very much. My question is directed to community water and sanitation. I like the reforms. My first national internship was with community water. But I wanted to find out, are there also reforms for sanitation? Because you mentioned the water, we are 62%. Sanitation, we are still behind. So are there reforms for rural sanitation? Thank you.
Your question is clear. Are there reforms for sanitation as well? Honorable.
Thank you very much. The management of solid waste and liquid waste in the districts are even more severe than what was shown on the board. I serve on the local government committee in Parliament, and we normally monitor the activities of the district assemblies. And there is no district assembly that we've gone, maybe apart from KMA, that had an engineered landfill site. Like Comrade said, it's a dumping ground. They have excavated very deep pit, and they drop everything inside, both the liquid one and then the solid waste. They're supposed to do some spraying to make the place good so that scavenging animals may not be there, but it's not done. Those who do it, they do it twice in a year. It's very, very, very serious. When you ask them, are there any streams around that get polluted with this? Oh, there are no rivers around, there are no streams, nothing. And they will defend it, oh, there are no streams. They are just in some dry valley deep down. But they've forgotten that even these rocks, there are cracks inside that these leakages can go through and kill us. My question is, these solutions to them, getting gas out of them and others, is the cost affordable that we can have some at the districts? And also the borehole that you said contain, is it Arsenal or Liverpool? Arsenic, fluoride and others. Then my constituency, we are all dead. Because Ejoso constituency, we are living on boreholes. The Barakese or Wabi Dam water that is produced for Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly or the metropolis, when you reach the railway crossing, they don't continue. As if there is some spiritual force there that they don't want to give us. It's very dangerous because we all feed on boreholes. Even I have some 20 mechanized boreholes that I'm providing for my communities. What do we have to do if we have all these inside? What is the solution? Otherwise, in the next 20 years, nobody will be alive in my constituency. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harold. And I really want to give kudos to the two presenters. And I take a special interest in the later presentation because of the energy component on that. And that gives me a lot of joy because only some 3 weeks ago, my alma mater, the University of Nigeria, they devised waste-to-energy generator from organic wastes and used it to power a 100 kVA generator. And they said, in fact, their plan is to power the entire university, the 3 megawatts. They want to upgrade to 250 kVA units and use it to power the entire university and get off the, the grid. So the suggestion you made here is something really that can very easily be pushed. And if the campuses here also touch base with the University of Nigeria, they perhaps can even come up with something much better than what has been achieved. And from the universities, we can, get that also put into bigger communities to help solve this power problem. So I think it is something that we should keep pushing. Wearing another cap as a politician and sitting next to another politician, I believe that you stand a good chance of really getting it supported and accepted at the government level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. President.
Well, this is not a question, it's a contribution. Regarding the waste to energy, we have to get our research institutions to determine the calorific value of our waste. Because if you have waste with energy less than 14.6 kilojoules per meter cube, you are not going to get any energy from it. So we have to do a lot of research work on the waste before we move in. Thank you.
Yeah, and on that score, somebody said, not all organic waste produces, because when you leave the fufu itself doesn't, the calorific value of fufu is very bad. So our fufu and our benku, and then when we leave those ones out, there has to be even some separation of our organic in certain fractions to be able to get the maximum out of it. It can be done, because that's what others did. They looked at the different categories, and people were educated, and once your electricity bill goes down, you are highly motivated to do it. Gridco, please don't frown at me.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Brief. Yeah, my name is Abdurrahim Seidi from Ghana Water Company Limited. My questions go to Edie. Yeah, there's a saying that one man's trash is another man's treasure. So there is really a lot that we can get from waste, as he said. But one thing that was not mentioned, which is an emerging trend in waste, is the electronic waste. Because we see how a lot of out-of-service electronic products are brought into the country. So what really plans do we have for that one too?
Thank you very much. I'm Engineer Richard Sakiti. from Community Water's presentation, Community Water is for rural, Ghana Water is for urban. Now there is a rate between the urban and rural is now, the growth is now, yes, the peri-urban. What is now being done? Is it Community Water taking advantage or Ghana Water taking advantage? Or collaboration?
Okay, so that's it. We are now coming over to, we'll start with Engineer Olanyo Siabi, OV.
Okay, thank you, Harold. I have 3 questions. I think the last one, peri-urban, I think we've started talking to Ghana Water Company. So what is important is that we have water for our country. It doesn't really matter whether it is CWS or, and we have engineers in CWS, we have engineers in Ghana Water. The most serious one, Honorable, I know you are very worried, but I want to make you more worried. Yes, one of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons, we don't talk about it, but we are colleagues and we will understand. Water safety is a very, very serious matter when it comes to water production, and especially for rural communities. See, the assumption is that once you drill a borehole, it's okay, and the water is there. If you are lucky, they will test it that day and say, oh, it's fine. If you are lucky and where you are testing, the laboratory is good, you get the results well. Good. If it's not, you get a bad results. But you see, we have all the elements we have. Iron, even iron is supposed to be that for women, it's only women and children who do not react to excess iron. We call it overload. When you take too much of it, it's only women because they share a lot of blood during their monthly cycle, and children because they are growing. But men, they have. There is a condition we call hemochromatosis. If you continue to take overloads of iron, you will be impotent. Now, the other one is this. But this is scary. This one is scary. You know, when children are exposed to a lot of consumption of manganese, it could be through water, it could be through any other thing. When you buy your cutlass and you go sit down, somebody to sharpen it for you, you are getting those particles into your system through the skin. And the skin is not there to absorb a lot of iron and manganese. You know, but when children are exposed, they have overloads, and it reduces their IQ until it's 0. You know, that's the most dangerous part of it. And you see, sometimes we take these things for granted. Yes, you can just run down the IQ of a child to 0. It doesn't mean that the child won't understand, but he cannot keep anything there for a very long period. You go to the classroom, they teach him, he's okay. 1 + 1, he says it's 2. When he gets back to the house, 1 + 1, he says it's 4. You know, so I think these are the reasons we are saying that water supply is a very technical thing, and we should not just leave it to rural communities, to people who do not have idea about how to produce water and how to keep it safe. And for all of these, we are doing something about it. The agency, that is why we have employed very qualified people. Now, at CWSA, we have engaged water quality specialists so that they will follow up and make sure that our supplies are okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, yesterday somebody talked about the fact that we, the engineers, should develop our soft skills and communication skills. A lot of communication and public education is required. A lot of it. Because everybody says, oh, I want to go and do a borehole. They don't even know the dangers that they are going to encounter. Till you are a specialist like yourself or some of us who read these research reports who know. In fact, I've been to a village in Upper East, I won't mention the name. you'll be surprised. 90% of the inhabitants have teeth that are browned. And
it is international information now, so you can mention it.
Well, you mention it, I will mention it. Because, it's down to this, and people are doing this without knowing. So it is the duty of us engineers, CWC, Ghana Institution of Engineering, to educate our populace. We are there to provide advisory services. It's part of our core functions of the institution. And all of us as engineers, we can keep hold of this information so that our brother, my roommate at Jolu, when we were doing national service. So when I see the MPs drilling holes all over, and you see, we need to advocate some of these things for people to understand that the dangers that they encounter. My sister's question about liquid waste and whatever. You see, Harold, all of us engineers, sometimes we need to have the difficult discussions. We need to have the difficult discussions. There are different schools of thought. Of course, Gamma is sponsoring this project, so I'm not supposed to say anything, But there's a school of thought that feels that, the World Bank and the donor agencies, they try to play us down the sanitation ladder. If you are prepared to provide a household toilet in every corner, then why don't we move for condominium sewage, for instance? You can do condominium sewage, small bore pipe sewage, and there are different systems.
I agree, 100%.
So it's a matter of all of us sitting down, having a discussion. There are those of us and who have the knowledge in that, we can have a good discussion and say, look, if it is Nima area, instead of providing every toilet, every biofuel, it's even the cost. I was doing a little research on computing the cost of septic tanks in every household. Do you know the cost of one septic tank, digging, the block work, the concrete? Computing it to just giving them an inlet to a big pipe that you just plug in and have a condominium sewage in a location, suitable location in the community. You can capture all the water that they waste. You can use it for gardening. And so once we start building sustainability into our design and our thinking, that can change that kind of thing. So I think we shouldn't worry. And then on the solid waste, I think we, the engineers, and I've always been challenging our colleagues at Tech. I mean, a community like Tech should have an anaerobic digester. It's not that expensive, and it can produce electricity and reduce the cost to the university community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our time is far spent. Okay.
There's one question I didn't answer about whether
sanitation.
Sanitation is part of it. Yes, but sanitation right now is unattractive. Nobody wants to provide money for you to go and be doing sanitation, and they ask you, "What have you done?" And you said, "Oh, I built toilet." So what we are doing is that what we are doing is that but what we are doing is we have concentrated on making sure we can mobilize resources from the water management. And so our board has agreed that as we move along, after 2020, annually the board will assign a certain amount of money. So those communities that are participating in our program, we will provide that service to them. So we get to those communities and make sure that we provide everything. We provide water, and then we also use that same money that you are paying for the water. We use it to improve sanitation in your community. So it is part of it, but we are only amplifying the water part for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. When he talked about the 1 + 1 and the child will say 4, it reminded me of a story before we go for lunch. They said there was this boy, I think because of the manganese, his IQ had gone very low. And they said, look, he had been in class 1 for 5 years. So they wanted to promote him. So the mother was brought in. And the mother sells donuts. We call it bow fruit in Ghana. And he asked that, if I have 1 bow fruit and I add a second one, how much does it become? The boy looked at his mother's face and he said, Ma, pacho bow fruit in a yeshi. He was asking that, is the donut hot? Then the mother was confused. How does this come in? I said, literally meaning it will be left with only the oil because you eat the donut. So on that note, we can move for our lunch. We are reconvening here at 2:30. Thank you very much.